This month marks the 25th anniversary of the massacre at El Salvador's University of Central America, in which 6 Jesuit scholars and 2 others were killed by armed Salvadoran men. The men were trained by an institution in the United States, specifically known as then the U.S. Army School of Americas. The SOA was a military training school for Latin American soldiers, situated just outside Columbus, Georgia. Their graduates have become infamous for being specially trained in torture and interrogation tactics, riot control, and psychological warfare, which they then take back to their home countries. In response, activists across the hemisphere organized and began holding yearly vigils to hold SOA accountable. In a PR campaign to revamp the school's image, the Pentagon, under President Clinton, renamed it the Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Cooperation, or WINSEC, in 2001. However, their mission has remained synonymous with U.S. militarization and imperialism. SOA Watch's annual march and vigil will be held once more at Fort Benning, Georgia, later this month. The group's mission is to stand in solidarity with the people of Latin America and the Caribbean, and to change oppressive U.S. foreign policy that the SOA represents. And here to discuss the 25th anniversary event is my guest, Hendrik Voss. He is the National Director of the School of the Americas Watch. Welcome to Uprising, Hendrik. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm wondering if you can actually hear us. We're having trouble hearing you. Can you hear me, Hendrik? We'll call him right back. Again, the 25th anniversary of the School of the Americas Watch is this year, later this year, and we'll give you some details. Groups will begin gathering in Fort Benning, Georgia, as they do every year from around the country. Now, it's not an issue that you hear very much about in the mainstream news. That's because most in the mainstream news don't cover the fact that we have a training institute for, as many people call it, assassins, essentially people trained in riot control and other very problematic tactics used by government. So it looks like we have Hendrik back on with us. Can you hear me, Hendrik?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
There we go. Great. So let's first begin by maybe getting a history lesson from you about this massacre that happened at the University of Central America in El Salvador. It was 25 years ago, and it was, I understand, in response to that your organization, the School of the Americas Watch, was founded?
Exactly. This was 25 years ago while the civil war was raging in El Salvador. The United States was pouring in $1 million of military aid every day to defeat the FMLN, the guerrilla organization that was fighting in El Salvador at that time. And the Jesuit priests who were working on the campus of the University of Central America were involved in liberation theology, so that they were working with the poor, standing with the poor. And a battalion of the Salvadoran military came in, raided the campus, raided the place where the the Jesuit priests were living, together with their housekeeper, Elba Ramos, and her 14-year-old daughter, Selena Ramos. And they took everybody outside, killed them, shot them on the ground. And later on, a congressional task force found out that 19 out of the 26 people responsible for the massacre were trained in the United States at the School of the Americas. The first anniversary of this massacre, a handful of activists, Salvadorans and US peace activists, gathered at the gates of Fort Benning to point out the complicity that the United States had with this massacre and with the civil wars and the repression campaigns in Central America in general.
So that was 25 years ago, and the march has built up over the years. It's now a multi-day event. There's a funeral procession that's held. But what has actually changed with what the school itself does, with the name change that took place more than 10 years ago? Has anything changed in terms of the services, if you will, that it offers generals and others in Latin American armies?
So the school, there was a lot, after the campaign started, there was a lot more spotlight on the school. And in the 90s, the school was forced to release training manuals that were used that advocated the use of torture, execution, and blackmail. In those training manuals, they also listed the enemy targets against whom those tactics should be used, and among them where people who do union organizing or recruiting, people who speak out and who say that the government has failed to meet the basic needs of the people, those were listed as enemy targets for torture tactics. So we started a congressional campaign where we had a direct action campaign combined with the legislative work, and we introduced bills to defund the School of the Americas. And in 2000, we actually won the vote in the House of Representatives. But then when it went to the Senate in the conference committee, the vote was overturned and funding was restored for the school. And this was a big warning signal for the Pentagon. And they came up with this PR campaign that the next year, to preempt our vote to shut it down, which we would have won, they came out with their proposal saying, okay, we closed down the School of the Americas, but we will open up a new school in the same building with the same instructors, with basically the same mission. So, and there were then a lot of members of Congress who previously voted with us, who were then giving into the Pentagon pressure, who had their very high-ranking people out on Capitol Hill. And we lost that vote by 200 to 214. And so the school then was renamed. And a lot of the members of Congress who were only with us because of grassroots pressure then found an out in that they said, okay, let's give this new school a chance. So however, we did the research, we looked at who is being trained at this new school, at the renamed school, and immediately we found cases of known human rights abusers who were readmitted at the school, people who were involved in torture, people who were involved in drug trade, who were attending the school. So the Pentagon then took that information, and instead of looking at the vetting process, what they did at that point was that they classified the names and said, now it's national security interest that human rights organizations cannot know who is being trained at the School of the Americas, now renamed.
So, Hendrik, what you're saying is that simply by classifying or reclassifying what's being done under this banner of national security, we, as American taxpayers, are not allowed to see what's really being done and who's being trained and what they're being trained at this new school, the WINSEC, the Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Cooperation. Is that accurate?
That's correct. And we have taken the government to court. We have filed a lawsuit against the Pentagon that they have to release the names. And actually in 2013, we won the lawsuit with a federal judge saying that the Pentagon has no justification whatsoever to not release the names. The government has appealed, and we are right now in the appeal phase. And we are hopeful that we will win the judicial case, and that the names will have to be released pretty soon.
So, Hendrik, we look at history. We look especially during in the 80s and 90s when there were all of these horrific turn of events in Central America, some of which you alluded to earlier in El Salvador, Guatemala, etc. But in recent years, we've seen things like the coup in Honduras happening. Do we know that there are links between what happened, for example, in Honduras, because that was one of the most recent, and the new School of the Americas, which I'm guessing your organization still essentially refers to as School of the Americas?
Absolutely, yes. The coup in Honduras was carried out by graduates of the School of the Americas. And this is a pattern that we have seen throughout history, that soldiers who are being trained by the US are being trained in order to do the bidding for the Pentagon in Latin America. And when in 2009, Manuel Zelaya, the president of Honduras, was going to institute some reforms, he was talking with social movement groups about kicking out Palmarola, the US military base, from Honduran soil. He talked about taking on big business, and he raised the minimum wage. And this was a point when SOA graduates stepped in, swept him out of office, conducted a military coup, and flew him out of the country. And the people in the leadership were graduates of the School of the Americas.
Hendrik, we just had, before we spoke with you, a lengthy conversation about the crisis in Mexico. What connections are there between the drug war in Mexico and the School of the Americas?
It is before 94, when the Zapatistas were uprising, there were very few Mexican soldiers at the School of the Americas. Mm-hmm. But then once the Zapatistas rose up, the numbers of Mexican soldiers at the School of the Americas skyrocketed. That then it was shortly after 2/3 of the graduating class were people from Mexico. And
Wow.
the US government and the Pentagon, then once we were doing research into that, they were saying, oh, this is only to do with Mexico's high involvement in the drug war, has nothing to do with the counterinsurgency campaign. But we looked at the courses that those Mexican graduates took, and were all the standard counterinsurgency courses. And later on, then our research showed that 18 high-ranking military officials who were involved in the war against the civilian populations in Chiapas were trained at the School of the Americas. And also now we see, high-ranking military officials in Mexico who have connections to the drug trade, who are using the so-called drug war as a smokescreen for political repression in Mexico.
So, Hendrik, tell our listeners what the annual gathering at Fort Benning, Georgia has looked like over the years. This has now become a multi-day gathering. It is a focus of hundreds, thousands of people coming from around the country and even from Latin America. What does it look like? What does it feel like? And what do you expect to happen this year on the 25th anniversary?
It has become the November Vigil at the gates of Fort Benning has grown into the largest annual anti-militarization convergence in North America. And we have people from across the Americas. This year there will be student activists from Mexico are coming to talk about the situation in Mexico, to strategize with people who are coming from Colombia, from El Salvador, from Guatemala. And we also have residents of Ferguson who are coming to the vigil. And it's because we see the connection between militarization abroad and militarization at home, that it's the same mindset that sees military solution, police and military violence as the solutions to social problems. And what we are trying to do is to change that culture and to change the culture in the US that allows for places like the School of the Americas to exist, and that allows for the epidemic of police violence in the United States.
So tell us what's happening this year. Where and when is the gathering happening? Can people who are listening and watching still make plans to join you?
Absolutely, yes. The gathering starts on Friday. We are renting out the Columbus Convention Center, where we have a opening plenary, several workshops, and also a concert. And then on Saturday morning, this will be the first time that we will do this, then on Saturday, is that we are driving from Columbus in a caravan to the Stewart Detention Center, which is one of the largest immigrant prisons in the United States. There are 1,800 migrants incarcerated. And we want to make the connection to show that people in Latin America and Central America have to flee because of SOA violence and repression. And once they come to the United States, they're again faced with repression and racism and the racist immigration system, so that they are then being incarcerated just for trying to get a better life for the families.
So connections made between militarism in the U.S., militarism abroad, militarism on the streets of Missouri, in Ferguson, and also against immigrants in the United States. In many ways, then lots of different connections being made. Finally, give out the website where people can find out about this. And also, Hendrik, I hope you don't mind me ending with a personal question to you. I'm guessing that you're German or Swiss. What is your personal involvement in this? What motivates you as the National Director of School of the Americas Watch to lead this struggle?
I myself came in 1999 from Germany to the United States in order to avoid military service in Germany, which at that point there was a draft, it was mandatory service. So, and then through my political upbringing within the autonomous anti-fascist movement, I was involved with some Latin America, Mexico solidarity work in Germany. And then I was seeing then, where would be the best place to be in solidarity and to do the work. And what I saw was to come to the United States in order to cut off military training, military funding for the boot that is in the neck of social movements throughout Central and Latin America.
I knew there was a story there. So soaw.org, I understand, is the website for School of the Americas Watch, where people can find out more and maybe make some last-minute plans to join you and thousands of others that will be showing up.
Yes, absolutely. So we've got on Saturday, also after we come back from Stewart, thousands will converge at the gates of Fort Benning. where the police and the military tried earlier this year to deny us a permit.
Right.
But we were pushing back, and we now have the right again to be at the gates. And there will be thousands will be gathered, musicians and speakers from throughout Latin America. And then on Sunday, we have a solemn funeral procession to remember the martyrs who have died in the past, but also the people who are still dying every day because of U.S. militarization at home and abroad.
So that's this weekend starting on Friday. Information about how people can join the march and funeral procession and the 3-day event, including a caravan on its 25th anniversary, is at soaw.org. Hendrik, best of luck to you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
My guest is Hendrik Voss. He is the National Director of the School of the Americas Watch, SOAW. Now, the School of the Americas is no longer in existence, but actually it is. It's simply renamed the Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Cooperation, and they have a website that you can certainly Google and find out more about. And that does it for our program today. This is Uprising. Bipasha Shom is our producer and our program director. Jennifer McMartin is our research intern. Christian Beck and Camilo Ramirez are our production interns. Daniel Swerdlove is our technical director. Federico Garcia and Jonathan Alexander are our audio engineers. Special thanks to Nadine Shelton of YouTube for her help. And you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're only 200 people short of 1,000. You can find us at youtube.com/uprisingwithsonali. Our website is simply uprisingwithsonali.com. Our theme music is by Quetzal. I'm Sonali Kohatkar, host and executive producer of Uprising. I'll see you tomorrow.